After a bit of a down year in 1985, the PC gaming industry bounced back somewhat in '86. While elsewhere in the country, stars were eating live hamsters and royalty were marrying common folk, PC gaming was seeing its influence spread, and the types of games on offer was expanding. However, all was not well for the PC and home computer game enthusiast. Alan Sugar had set his sights on one of British computing's stalwarts.
Get away from her, you bitch!
I'm the Geeky Dad, and this is a history of PC gaming. Hot off the back of Elite came a game by EA which took inspiration from that very title. In 1986, EA released Starflight. Binary Systems developed the title where you take the role of a starship captain and go out to explore the galaxy. Much like Elite, the game was open-ended, allowing the player to trade, mine, become diplomatic or engage in ship-to-ship combat. The game had 270 star systems for the player to explore, and each system had between 0 and 8 planets. All planets could be landed on, although if the gravity was greater than 8G, your ship would get destroyed. This gave the player over 800 planets to explore. Unlike Elite, however, this game did have a plot, but much like Bioshock, the plot was slowly discovered by the player as they discovered clues about why an ancient race of beings were causing stars to flare. The development team hadn't really worked on a computer game before. However, they developed what they call a fractal generator, which generated the content of each of the planets the player could visit. Starflight sold over 100,000 copies in the release year. It was well received at the time, with Computer Gaming World calling it the best science fiction game available on a computer. Like Elite before it, Starflight went on to influence many games in the future. Casey Hudson, the director of the Mass Effect series, tweeted in 2011 that Starflight was a key inspiration for the Mass Effect series. Sid Meier's making his second appearance in this video series. This makes him the most mentioned developer up to this point, but that's largely because I've only done one Ultima game so far. Microprose released Silent Service in 1986, a submarine simulation based on the Pacific conflict in World War II. You took control of an American submarine for various patrols against the Japanese Navy. The game attempted to give the player a realistic simulation of submarine combat, including the almost invisibility of submarines at night, as well as the famed end-around tactic. I've tried my best to understand this tactics for creating this video, but I just can't make heads or tail of it. I imagine it's a lot like the American football player of the same name. The game was another great simulation released by Sid Meier's, who was making his name as a top developer of simulation games. Silent Service sold very well for the time, shifting 400,000 units by the end of 1987 across various platforms. It was praised by video game journalists of the time as a deeply realistic simulation. Well, apart from the fact that you could only have 4 torpedoes on the screen at once. Fire a torpedo and miss? Well, you better wait for it to disappear over the horizon before you can fire another. Despite this, a sequel was released for this game in 1990. Sinclair Research was held in very high regard by the British public for much of the late 70s and early 80s. The company had released many versions of the Sinclair Spectrum to the market, and the British public had lapped up the microcomputer. Everything was looking rosy for Clive Sinclair until he had a colossal brain fart. Sinclair felt that the electric vehicle market was ready and waiting for someone with a unique product to take advantage of it. Sinclair had done the exact same thing with the home computer market and had been very successful, so why wouldn't the same thing work in the electric vehicle market? While Clive might have been right that the British public were clamouring for an electric vehicle, they didn't really want anything to do with his solution. The Sinclair C5 has been branded one of the great marketing bombs of post-war British industry. All this failure led to the sale of the entire computer product range and the Sinclair brand to everyone's favourite Tottenham supporting, House of Lords attending, idiot firing, star of The Apprentice, Alan Sugar. And it's alright to call him Alan because he hadn't been made a lord at this point. The brand wasn't killed off, but the love and affection many had felt for the Spectrum would not carry over to the Amstrad's versions of the microcomputer. Gone was the affection for the plucky upstart who had revolutionised the home computer market in the UK, and the death knell sounded for the slow demise of the Sinclair home computer. Who would you say is the first name in adventure games? Well, today it would probably be Telltale Games. However, in the early 90s, that name was LucasArts. Their very first adventure game came out in 1986, and it was an adaptation of the Bowie-Jim Henderson collab epic Labryinth. The game did not faithfully follow the plot of the movie, however, although it did feature the film's main antagonist Jareth. The game's plot was your player character had gone to the cinema to watch the Labryinth movie, and Jareth had transported him to the Labryinth prison. The player then had 13 real-time hours to escape the Labyrinth and win the game. Unlike many adventure games of the time, Labryinth the computer game did not use a text parser. It used an action wheel system where all possible actions that could be performed in the game could be obtained through a pair of lists, one of verbs and one of nouns. So you could choose to eat from the verbs list and pie from the nouns list to get the command eat pie. This was the basis of what later went on to become the Scum engine, which was the backbone of all great LucasArts titles. However, this move away from text parsers brought with it some controversy. Purists of text-based adventures found the wheels clunky and awkward to use. This didn't prevent the game from reviewing well, however, and eventually the game sales outstripped the film revenue in the USA. But this isn't too much of an achievement because Labryinth was a bit of a flop in the USA, unlike its native Britain. Another year of PC gaming is in the books. Do you remember playing any of these classics? Do you remember the Sinclair C5 and the subsequent demise of the Spectrum? Perhaps you think Labryinth is one of the best movies ever made. Please leave me a comment with your thoughts. Thank you very much for watching. I've been the Geeky Dad, and this is the history of PC gaming.